The surprise in my wife's bag exposed her affair when I caught them in the act. The atmosphere in the room was thick with unspoken words as Linda sat across from the narrator, her eyes darting nervously, betraying the storm brewing within her. It was an ordinary evening, yet everything felt charged with an impending revelation that hung heavily in the air. The narrator could sense that something was off, an unsettling tension that made their heart race. As they exchanged small talk, the narrator's mind raced with questions, each one more anxious than the last. What was going on? Why did Linda seem so distant? The moment stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity, until finally, Linda took a deep breath, her expression shifting from apprehension to resolve. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice trembling slightly. The narrator's heart sank, a premonition of the impending storm washing over them. They braced themselves, a knot tightening in their stomach as they prepared for the worst. Linda's next words shattered the fragile peace they had built over the years. "I've been thinking about having an affair." The confession hung in the air like a lead weight, and the narrator felt the ground beneath them shift. Betrayal coursed through their veins, a sharp, piercing pain that left them momentarily speechless. How could she say that? The very foundation of their relationship felt like it was crumbling, and confusion clouded their mind. The narrator's thoughts spiraled as they tried to process Linda's revelation. Was this a fleeting thought, a moment of weakness, or something deeper? They felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, disbelief, each one crashing over them like waves. How could Linda, the person they loved and trusted, even entertain the idea of being with someone else? The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in their gut, and they struggled to find the words to respond. "Why?" was all they could manage, their voice barely above a whisper, laced with hurt. Linda's expression shifted, revealing the conflicting emotions that battled within her. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking, "but I feel so trapped. I don't know if I'm happy anymore." The narrator's heart ached at her words, torn between the love they felt for her and the pain of her admission. How could she love them and still consider betraying that love? The tension in the room was palpable, a suffocating silence that seemed to stretch on indefinitely. Linda continued, her voice trembling as she tried to explain her feelings. "It's not that I don't care about you. I do. But I've been feeling unfulfilled, like there's something missing in my life. I thought maybe an affair could fill that void." Each word felt like a dagger, and the narrator struggled to comprehend the depth of her conflict. How could she equate love with infidelity? The stakes of their discussion were impossibly high, and the narrator felt the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. As Linda spoke, the narrator's mind raced with memories of their life together. The laughter, the dreams, the promises made. How could everything they built together be so easily dismissed? The confusion was overwhelming. They wanted to understand her pain, yet the thought of her being with someone else ignited a fierce protectiveness within them. "But what about us?" they asked, their voice trembling with emotion. "What about everything we've shared?" Linda's eyes filled with tears, and the narrator could see the internal struggle reflected in her gaze. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "but I feel like I'm losing myself. I thought maybe if I explored this part of me, I could find a way back to who I used to be." The narrator felt a mix of sympathy and anger, grappling with the realization that Linda was in pain. Yet the way she was choosing to cope felt like a betrayal of everything they had built together. The tension in the room escalated, each moment stretching into an eternity as they faced the reality of their situation. The stakes were impossibly high. The future of their marriage hung in the balance. The narrator felt a desperate need to reach out, to bridge the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. "We can work through this," they pleaded, their voice filled with urgency. "We can find a way to reconnect. Please don't throw everything away." Linda's expression softened, but the conflict remained. "I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The narrator felt a wave of despair wash over them, realizing that this moment could change everything. The love they shared was now intertwined with the threat of infidelity, and the path forward seemed uncertain. As they sat in that charged silence, both grappling with their emotions, The narrator understood that this conversation was just the beginning of a long and painful journey. The stakes were high, and the outcome was anything but clear. The decision to gather evidence of Linda's affair was not one made lightly. It was born out of desperation and a profound sense of betrayal. The narrator felt an overwhelming need to confront the truth, to understand the reality of Linda's feelings and actions. The thought of her being with someone else gnawed at them, and the uncertainty was unbearable. They needed proof, something tangible to either confirm their worst fears or provide a glimmer of hope that they could salvage their marriage. The first step in this painful journey was to monitor Linda's activities discreetly. The narrator began by observing her daily routines, noting the subtle changes that had crept into their lives. Linda had started coming home later than usual, often with vague excuses about work or social gatherings. The narrator felt a knot tighten in their stomach each time she walked through the door, the familiar scent of her perfume now tinged with suspicion. They decided to take a more proactive approach, carefully tracking her movements. Using a combination of technology and old-fashioned sleuthing, the narrator began to piece together Linda's schedule. They installed a tracking app on her phone, justifying the invasion of privacy as a necessary means to an end. Each ping of the app sent a jolt of anxiety through them, revealing Linda's whereabouts in real time. They found themselves obsessively checking the app, their heart racing at every notification. The emotional toll of spying on a spouse was immense. It felt like a betrayal of its own, a violation of the trust that had once defined their relationship. The narrator also took to following Linda on occasion, keeping a safe distance as they trailed her to various locations. Each time they saw her laughing with friends or engaged in seemingly innocent conversations, a wave of guilt washed over them. They were becoming the very thing they despised, someone who couldn't trust their partner. The emotional impact of this spying was profound. It was a constant battle between love and suspicion, hope and despair. The narrator felt like they were living in a shadowy world where every moment was tainted by doubt. As the days turned into weeks, the narrator's resolve only strengthened. They discovered that Linda had been spending time with a man named Frank Jones, a name that sent a chill down their spine. Frank was someone they had heard of in passing, a colleague of Linda's who had always seemed charming and charismatic. The thought of him being the other man filled the narrator with a mix of anger and heartbreak. They couldn't shake the image of Linda laughing with Frank, sharing intimate moments that should have been reserved for their marriage. The more the narrator learned about Frank, the more their anxiety grew. He was everything the narrator felt they were not: confident, adventurous, and seemingly able to provide Linda with the excitement she craved. The narrator's mind raced with questions. What did Linda see in him? How could she choose to pursue an affair instead of working through their issues? The emotional turmoil was relentless, and the narrator found themselves spiraling deeper into a pit of despair. One evening, after a particularly long day of monitoring Linda, the narrator stumbled upon a series of text messages between her and Frank. Their heart raced as they read the exchanges, each message confirming their worst fears. The playful banter, the flirtation, and the unmistakable chemistry leaped off the screen, leaving the narrator feeling hollow. It was as if the ground had been pulled from beneath them, and they were left grappling with the reality of Linda's betrayal. The decision to confront Linda loomed large in the narrator's mind, but they felt paralyzed by fear. What would they say? How could they express the pain and confusion that had taken root in their heart? The evidence they had gathered felt like a double-edged sword. It could either lead to a cathartic confrontation or a devastating end to their marriage. The emotional weight of the situation was suffocating, and the narrator found themselves questioning their own worth. As the days passed, the narrator's internal struggle intensified. They were caught in a web of deceit, not only from Linda but also from their own actions. The act of spying had transformed them into someone they barely recognized, someone willing to invade the privacy of the person they loved most. The guilt was overwhelming, yet the need for answers pushed them forward. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Armed with the evidence they had painstakingly gathered, the narrator felt a mix of dread and determination. They knew they had to confront Linda, to lay bare the reality of her actions and the impact it had on their marriage. The stakes were impossibly high, and the emotional fallout was bound to be devastating. As they prepared for the confrontation, the narrator reflected on the journey that had led them to this point. The pain of betrayal, the emotional turmoil of spying, and the introduction of Frank Jones as the other man had all converged into a single moment. They understood that this was not just about uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming their own sense of self and confronting the reality of their relationship. The path ahead was uncertain, but the narrator knew they had to face it head-on, no matter the cost. The weekend loomed ahead like a dark cloud, heavy with the weight of impending betrayal. The narrator could hardly focus on anything else as they prepared to document Linda's planned rendezvous with Frank. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, filled with a mix of dread and determination. They had spent the week gathering evidence, piecing together the fragments of Linda's secret life, and now it was time to confront the reality of her infidelity. The narrator meticulously organized their plan, ensuring they had everything they needed to capture the truth. They charged their camera, checked the batteries, and made sure their phone was fully equipped with apps for discreet recording. The act of preparing felt surreal. It was as if they were gearing up for a mission rather than confronting the woman they loved. The emotional turmoil was palpable, a storm of anxiety and heartbreak swirling within them. They felt like a detective in a noir film, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment when the truth would be revealed. As the day approached, the narrator's mind raced with thoughts of what Linda might be doing. Would she be laughing with Frank, sharing intimate glances, or whispering sweet nothings that should have been reserved for their marriage? The anticipation was agonizing, each moment stretching into an eternity. They replayed the conversations they had had with Linda, searching for clues that might explain her actions. How could she be so excited about spending time with another man while they were left grappling with the pain of betrayal? The contrast between the narrator's pain and Linda's excitement was stark. They imagined her getting ready for the weekend, perhaps picking out a new outfit, applying makeup, and feeling a thrill at the thought of being with Frank. The thought of her joy felt like a dagger to the heart. How could she so easily cast aside the love they had built together? The narrator felt a mix of anger and sadness, a potent cocktail of emotions that threatened to overwhelm them. As the weekend dawned, the narrator found themselves in a state of heightened alertness. They had chosen a discreet location to observe Linda and Frank, a nearby cafe that offered a clear view of the entrance. The narrator arrived early, their heart racing as they settled into a corner booth, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. They took a deep breath, trying to steady their nerves, but the anticipation was electric. Time seemed to crawl as they waited, each tick of the clock amplifying their anxiety. They sipped on a lukewarm coffee, their hands trembling slightly as they held the cup. The cafe was bustling with life, couples chatting and laughing, oblivious to the turmoil brewing within the narrator. They felt like an outsider, trapped in a world that no longer felt familiar. Finally, the moment arrived. Linda walked in, her face lighting up with a radiant smile that sent a jolt of pain through the narrator's heart. She looked beautiful, dressed in a flowing sundress that accentuated her figure, her hair cascading in soft waves. The sight of her filled the narrator with a mix of admiration and anguish. How could she look so carefree while they were drowning in despair? Moments later, Frank entered the cafe, and the narrator's heart sank further. He was everything the narrator had imagined, confident, charming, and undeniably attractive. The way Linda's face lit up at the sight of him was a punch to the gut. They exchanged warm embraces, and the narrator felt a wave of nausea wash over them. It was as if they were witnessing a scene from a movie, one that they had no part in, and the pain of exclusion was almost unbearable. As Linda and Frank settled into a booth, the narrator focused on documenting every detail. They discreetly snapped photos, capturing the moments that would serve as evidence of Linda's betrayal. Each click of the camera felt like a nail being driven into their heart, a reminder of the love that was slipping away. The laughter and flirtation between Linda and Frank were like daggers, each one piercing deeper into the narrator's soul. The emotional turmoil was relentless. The narrator felt a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, and a desperate longing for the connection they once shared with Linda. They wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but they knew they had to remain hidden, to gather the evidence that would ultimately lead to a confrontation. The anticipation of that moment was both exhilarating and terrifying. As the afternoon wore on, the narrator watched Linda and Frank share intimate conversations, their chemistry palpable. They leaned in close, their laughter ringing out like a cruel reminder of what the narrator was missing. The contrast between Linda's excitement and the narrator's pain was stark, a painful juxtaposition that felt almost unbearable. The narrator's heart ached with each shared smile, each touch that should have belonged to them. The hours dragged on, and the narrator felt as if they were trapped in a nightmare from which they couldn't wake. They were caught in a web of emotions, torn between the love they still felt for Linda and the betrayal that was unfolding before their eyes. The evidence they were gathering felt like a double-edged sword. It would provide clarity, but it would also shatter the illusion of the life they had built together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the cafe, the narrator knew that the moment of confrontation was drawing near. They had gathered enough evidence to confront Linda, but the thought of doing so filled them with dread. The emotional toll of the day weighed heavily on their heart, and they felt a deep sense of loss for the love that was slipping away. In that moment, as they watched Linda and Frank share a laugh, the narrator understood that this weekend would change everything. The pain of betrayal was palpable, but so was the determination to uncover the truth. They steeled themselves for the confrontation that awaited, knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with heartache and uncertainty. The weekend had begun, and with it, the unraveling of a love that had once felt unbreakable. The air in the room was thick with tension as the narrator stood before Linda, the evidence of her betrayal weighing heavily in their hands. The photographs, the text messages, and the memories of her laughter with Frank all swirled in their mind, creating a storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm them. This was the moment they had dreaded yet anticipated, the confrontation that would lay bare the truth of their fractured relationship. "Why, Linda?" The narrator's voice trembled, a mixture of anger and heartbreak spilling out. "How could you do this to us?" The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Linda's face paled, her eyes widening as she took in the evidence laid before her. The shock was palpable, and for a moment, the room fell silent, the only sound being the narrator's ragged breathing. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The realization of what she had done began to sink in, and the narrator could see the flicker of guilt cross her face. I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. It just did." The narrator felt a surge of anger at her feeble excuse, the pain of her betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. "Didn't mean for it to happen," they echoed incredulously, their voice rising in intensity. "You made a choice, Linda. You chose to be with him. You chose to betray me." The emotional intensity of the moment surged, and the narrator felt their heart racing, each beat echoing the hurt and anger that coursed through them. They had trusted her, had given her everything, and now it felt like that trust had been shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Linda's eyes filled with tears, and the narrator could see the conflict raging within her. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I felt so lost." The narrator's heart ached at her words, but the pain of betrayal overshadowed any remnants of love they had for her. "You think that justifies what you did?" they shot back, their voice laced with bitterness. "You think that saying you love me somehow makes it okay to sleep with another man?" The emotional turmoil was palpable, and the room felt charged with the weight of their shared history. Memories flooded the narrator's mind, moments of laughter, love, and connection that now felt tainted by Linda's actions. "We had something real, Linda," they continued, their voice trembling with emotion, "and you threw it away for a fleeting thrill. How could you be so selfish?" Linda's face crumpled, and the tears began to flow freely. "I didn't think about it like that," she admitted, her voice choked with regret. "I was caught up in my own feelings, my own insecurities. I thought I could find something I was missing." The narrator felt a mix of anger and sadness at her admission. "And what about me? What about the love we built together? Did that mean nothing to you?" The realization of the consequences of her actions began to dawn on Linda, and the weight of her choices pressed down on her like a heavy shroud. I never wanted to lose you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could have both, an escape and the love I had at home. I was wrong. The narrator could see the pain etched on her face, the realization that her actions had irrevocably changed everything between them. Wrong doesn't even begin to cover it, they replied, their voice thick with emotion. You've shattered my trust, Linda. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The words felt like a dagger, but they needed to be said. The emotional intensity of the moment was overwhelming, and the narrator felt as if they were standing on the precipice of a chasm, unsure of what lay on the other side. Linda took a step closer, her eyes pleading. Please, let me explain. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could handle it, that I could keep it separate from us. The narrator shook their head, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. You can't compartmentalize love, Linda. You can't just decide to have an affair and think it won't affect everything else. The silence that followed was deafening, each moment stretching into eternity as they both grappled with the reality of their situation. Linda's shoulders slumped, and the narrator could see the weight of her choices bearing down on her. I'm so sorry, she finally said, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so confused. The narrator felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the pain of betrayal. Confused? You had a choice, Linda. You chose to betray me, to betray us. That's not confusion. That's a conscious decision. The anger surged within them, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to consume them both. Linda's face crumpled further, and the tears flowed freely now. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I can't take it back. But I love you. I want to fix this. The narrator felt a pang of longing at her words, a flicker of the love they once shared. But the hurt was too fresh, too raw. Love isn't enough to erase what you've done, they replied, their voice steady but filled with pain. The emotional intensity of the confrontation reached its peak, and the narrator felt as if they were standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss. They had loved Linda deeply, but now that love was intertwined with betrayal and heartbreak. The realization that their relationship would never be the same settled heavily in the air between them. As the confrontation drew to a close, the narrator felt a sense of finality wash over them. They had laid bare their feelings, their pain, and their anger, and now it was time to face the consequences of Linda's actions. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The love they once shared had been irrevocably altered, and the journey to healing would be long and fraught with challenges. In that moment, as they stood facing each other, the narrator understood that this was not just a confrontation. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would require both of them to confront the truth of their choices and the impact those choices would have on their lives moving forward. The emotional intensity of the moment lingered, a bittersweet reminder of the love that had once been, now overshadowed by the reality of betrayal. The decision to file for divorce was not one the narrator arrived at lightly. It was the culmination of weeks of heartache, betrayal, and a profound realization that the love they once shared with Linda had been irrevocably altered. The emotional turmoil of the confrontation had left them feeling raw and exposed, but it also ignited a spark of clarity. They understood that staying in a relationship marred by infidelity and broken trust would only prolong their suffering. It was time to take control of their life and begin the process of healing. The first step in initiating the divorce process was to consult with a lawyer. The narrator spent hours researching local attorneys, seeking someone who specialized in family law and could guide them through the complexities of divorce. After several consultations, they found a lawyer who not only understood the legal intricacies, but also empathized with the emotional weight of the situation. The narrator felt a sense of relief wash over them as they began to outline the steps necessary to move forward. Filing for divorce required gathering a significant amount of documentation, financial records, property deeds, and any evidence of Linda's infidelity. The narrator spent countless hours compiling everything, each document a painful reminder of the life they had built together. As they sifted through old photographs and shared memories, a wave of sadness washed over them. It was as if they were mourning the loss of a dream, the vision of a future that had been so vividly painted in their mind now reduced to a series of legal papers. Once the paperwork was filed, the narrator felt a mix of emotions. There was a sense of empowerment in taking this step, a feeling of reclaiming their life after months of feeling powerless. Yet, there was also an undeniable sadness that lingered. The narrator had loved Linda deeply, and the decision to end their marriage felt like a betrayal of that love, even if it was ultimately necessary. They grappled with the conflicting emotions of anger, sadness, and relief, each one vying for dominance in their heart. As the divorce process unfolded, the narrator began to focus on their emotional journey towards healing. They sought therapy, recognizing the importance of having a safe space to process their feelings. The therapist helped them navigate the complex emotions that accompanied the end of a significant relationship. They learned to articulate their pain, to confront the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface, and to understand that healing was not a linear process. The narrator also began to explore new interests and hobbies, seeking ways to rediscover themselves outside of the confines of their marriage. They took up painting, finding solace in the act of creating something beautiful from the chaos of their emotions. Each brushstroke became a form of therapy, a way to express the feelings that words often failed to capture. They also reconnected with friends, leaning on their support system to help fill the void left by Linda's absence. Through this journey, the narrator began to grasp the concept of moving on from a toxic relationship. They realized that love should not come at the cost of their self-worth or happiness. Linda's infidelity had revealed the cracks in their relationship, and the realization that they had been living in a toxic environment was both liberating and painful. The narrator understood that moving on was not just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming their identity and embracing the possibility of a brighter future. As the divorce proceedings progressed, the narrator found themselves reflecting on the lessons learned from their relationship with Linda. They recognized the importance of trust and communication, and how easily those foundations could be eroded. The pain of betrayal had taught them valuable lessons about self-respect and the necessity of setting boundaries. They began to envision a future where they could cultivate healthy relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. The emotional journey towards healing was not without its challenges. There were days when the weight of sadness felt unbearable, moments when the memories of their life with Linda would flood back, leaving them feeling lost and alone. But with each passing day, the narrator grew stronger. They learned to embrace the discomfort, understanding that healing was a process that required patience and self-compassion. As the divorce became a reality, the narrator felt a sense of closure beginning to take shape. They were no longer defined by their relationship with Linda. They were reclaiming their narrative, one step at a time. The decision to file for divorce had been a painful but necessary choice, and with it came the promise of new beginnings. In the end, the narrator understood that moving on from a toxic relationship was not just about severing ties. It was about rediscovering themselves and embracing the possibility of a future filled with love, joy, and authenticity. They were ready to step into the next chapter of their life, armed with the lessons learned from the past and a renewed sense of hope for what lay ahead. The journey would be long, but the narrator was determined to emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the beauty of life once more. The day had finally arrived, the moment the narrator had both dreaded and anticipated. The emotional farewell between them and Linda. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the weight of finality hung heavily in the room. As they stood facing each other, the memories of their shared life flooded back, each one a bittersweet reminder of what had been lost. The walls that had once echoed with laughter now felt like a tomb, silent and suffocating, filled with the ghosts of their past. Linda's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and the narrator could see the pain etched on her face. "I never wanted it to end like this," she said, her voice trembling. The sincerity in her tone tugged at the narrator's heart, but the hurt of her betrayal loomed larger than any lingering affection. "Neither did I," they replied softly, their voice thick with emotion. "But we can't go back. We can't pretend that everything is okay." The sadness of their parting was palpable, a heavy blanket that enveloped them both. They stood in the living room, surrounded by remnants of their life together. Framed photographs, shared mementos, and the echoes of laughter that once filled the space. Each item felt like a reminder of the love that had once flourished between them, now overshadowed by betrayal and heartbreak. The narrator felt a lump form in their throat, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. As they exchanged glances, the narrator could see the flicker of regret in Linda's eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you." The narrator felt a surge of anger at her words, the pain of her infidelity still fresh in their mind. "But you did," they replied, their voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You made choices that hurt us both, and now we have to face the consequences." The finality of the moment settled in, and the narrator knew that this was not just a goodbye. It was a closing chapter in a book that had once been filled with hope and love. They took a deep breath, steeling themselves for the symbolic act that would mark the end of their marriage. The wedding ring, once a symbol of their love and commitment, now felt like a weight they could no longer bear. With trembling hands, the narrator reached into their pocket and pulled out the ring. The simple band glinted in the light, a stark reminder of the vows they had exchanged. It felt heavy in their palm, a tangible representation of the love that had once been so vibrant but had now faded into a distant memory. "This belongs to you," they said, their voice steady but filled with emotion. "I can't keep it. It doesn't represent what we have anymore." Linda's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "No, please," she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. "I don't want to take it back. It's a part of us." The narrator shook their head, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "It was a part of us, but that part is gone. We can't hold on to something that no longer exists." As they extended the ring towards her, the air felt charged with emotion. Linda reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool metal, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The weight of their shared history hung in the balance, and the narrator could see the realization dawning on her face. This was it, the end of their journey together, the final act of letting go. With a shaky breath, Linda took the ring from the narrator's hand, her expression a mix of sorrow and acceptance. "I never wanted to lose you," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. The narrator felt their heart ache at her words, but they knew that this was the only path forward. "I know," they replied softly, "but we can't keep trying to hold on to something that's already broken." The emotional farewell felt like a scene from a movie, filled with poignant moments and lingering glances. They stood there, two souls intertwined yet irrevocably separated, each grappling with the weight of their choices. The sadness of their parting was overwhelming, but beneath it all lay a sense of resolve. The narrator understood that this was not just an ending. It was a beginning, a chance to reclaim their life and move forward. As Linda turned to leave, the narrator felt a wave of emotions crash over them. Sadness, anger, and a flicker of hope. They had loved deeply, but they had also been hurt profoundly. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they were determined to embrace it. They watched as Linda walked away, the finality of the moment settling in their bones. In that instant, the narrator felt a sense of liberation wash over them. They were no longer bound by the chains of a toxic relationship. They were free to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. The act of returning the wedding ring had symbolized more than just the end of their marriage. It had marked the beginning of their journey towards healing and self-discovery. As the door closed behind Linda, the narrator took a deep breath, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. They were ready to move forward, to embrace the unknown, and to reclaim their identity. The sadness of their parting would linger, but it would not define them. They were determined to rise from the ashes of their past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The journey ahead was theirs to shape, and they were ready to embrace it with open arms. The narrator's journey through heartbreak and betrayal has illuminated several key takeaways that resonate deeply with anyone who has experienced the complexities of love and relationships. At the heart of this experience lies the undeniable importance of trust and communication. These two pillars form the foundation of any healthy relationship, and when they are compromised, the entire structure can begin to crumble. The narrator learned this lesson the hard way, as the betrayal of trust shattered the bond they once shared with Linda. Trust is not merely a word. It is a commitment to honesty and transparency. The narrator's experience serves as a poignant reminder that once trust is broken, it can be incredibly challenging to rebuild. Linda's infidelity created a rift that not only affected their relationship, but also left the narrator grappling with feelings of inadequacy and confusion. The emotional fallout was profound, highlighting how essential it is for partners to foster an environment where they can openly communicate their feelings, fears, and desires. Communication, too, is vital. The narrator realized that many of the issues in their relationship stemmed from unspoken thoughts and feelings. Linda's decision to seek fulfillment outside their marriage was, in part, a result of her inability to express her dissatisfaction. This underscores the necessity for couples to engage in honest dialogues, to check in with one another regularly, and to address concerns before they escalate into something more damaging. The narrator's journey emphasizes that vulnerability can be a strength, allowing partners to connect on a deeper level and navigate challenges together. As viewers reflect on their own relationships, it's crucial to consider how trust and communication play a role in their dynamics. Are there unspoken issues that need to be addressed? Are both partners feeling heard and valued? The narrator's experience serves as a call to action for anyone who may be struggling in their relationship. It's an invitation to take a step back and evaluate the health of their connection. Relationships require ongoing effort and attention, and it's essential to nurture them actively. Moreover, the narrator's journey illustrates that it's never too late to seek help. Whether through therapy, open conversations, or even self-reflection, taking proactive steps can lead to healing and growth. The emotional turmoil faced by the narrator was not just about the end of a marriage. It was also about rediscovering themselves and learning valuable lessons about love, respect, and boundaries. For those who find themselves in similar situations, it's important to remember that healing is a process. The narrator's decision to file for divorce was not just an end but also a beginning, a chance to reclaim their identity and embrace new opportunities. Moving on from a toxic relationship can be daunting, but it can also lead to personal growth and a renewed sense of purpose. As we conclude this exploration of the narrator's experience, we encourage viewers to take these lessons to heart. Reflect on your own relationships and consider how trust and communication play a role in your connections. Are there areas that need improvement? Are you fostering an environment where both partners feel safe to express their thoughts and feelings? In the spirit of fostering healthy relationships, we invite you to subscribe for more content on relationship dynamics. Our channel is dedicated to exploring the intricacies of love, trust, and communication, providing insights and tools to help you navigate your own relationships more effectively. Whether you're seeking advice on conflict resolution, tips for improving communication, or stories of resilience and healing, we're here to support you on your journey. Remember, relationships are a two-way street, and both partners must be willing to invest in their connection. By prioritizing trust and communication, you can create a foundation that withstands the tests of time. The narrator's experience serves as a powerful reminder that while love can be complicated, it is also a beautiful journey filled with opportunities for growth and understanding. Thank you for joining us as we explored the narrator's emotional journey. We hope that their story resonates with you and inspires you to reflect on your own relationships. Together, let's continue to learn, grow, and foster connections that are built on trust, respect, and open communication. Subscribe now for more insights and discussions on the dynamics of love and relationships, and let's embark on this journey together.